So we're talking about nutrition and how important that is, and really about prioritizing that. I think that's a lot. That's if, sort of with every element in people's lives, it's what they prioritize. So a lot of people don't prioritize exercise, or they don't prioritize food, or they prioritize other things, and that's what's important to them, or what they think is important. And I guess again that comes around to that whole being a complete person.
Yeah, and with that, there's the cheesy thing that you always see memes about, that you need to prioritize your health before you prioritize your unhealth. So we need to at least have some nutrients in our diet. We need to do some exercise, especially as we're getting a little older. We're both guilty of trying to still do the things we could do when we were 20, and as a result not recovering very well, being tired, getting injured, etc, etc. I've been writing quite a lot about it recently, about the fact that as we get older, cardio is good from a mental health point of view, and obviously your heart and lungs being more efficient helps with everything from cognitive function right the way through to just being able to get up some stairs without feeling like you're going to die. But as you get older, the thing that improves your quality of life, and the thing that what I've noticed, when people try to start exercise at this age of life, they go straight for cardio because they can see a number on their watch or on the treadmill that says how many calories they burn. But that's always a losing battle. If you're looking at calories that you eat compared to calories that you burn, when you're in your 20s, you can probably out-train a poor diet. Because you can recover well enough from heavy sessions. But when you're our age,
and you haven't got an exercise background,
it's particularly difficult, especially to then dive into it, and that's where people are getting injured. And part of the work I do with my injury therapy clients is to look at how they breathe, how they move, how their hydration level is, what sort of foods they're eating, because all of it, as we get older, is more important. The thing that I quite often hear people say is that I just haven't got any upper body strength. Well, when did you do anything to improve your upper body strength? Oh, I don't, but I go running. It's like, well, you're never going to get upper body strength running. So we need to prioritise the things that improve your life on a daily basis, which is having joints that move freely, being strong enough to get up and down off the floor. Cardio is a bonus, I think, we've done Ironman stuff together. We've done multiple 100+ mile rides for just something we were doing at the weekend, rather than lots of people seeing them. And again, in the Ironman world, there's so much mythology and utter rubbish that we've sort of ignored, thankfully, where you've got to have a set bike or a set thing you've got to do before you can do an Ironman. You've got to have done these events or done this, and we just sort of thought,
well, we're going to do, because they said, you need 2 years, didn't they?
Yeah.
And we did it in 3 months. I mean,
we had a little bit. We were both fit
previously,
and we started. It was about this time of year, and what led to it was essentially me not being money driven and not being able to afford to run a Porsche. So I was having a semi midlife crisis, and then Fran said, what about doing an Ironman? And I didn't think it was going to be hard enough. And then the way these Facebook algorithms worked was that Fran was scrolling and saw a non-branded Ironman, but an Ironman distance event that was in Scotland and included finishing the marathon by going up and down Ben Nevis. And she said, would you think this one would be difficult enough? And I thought, actually, I think that would. And I loved being, I'd only been to Scotland a few times up until that point, and I've really enjoyed it. So I thought, well, what's to lose? We can spend some time looking at some beautiful scenery and being on a mountain. It hurt, as you know, but we then did some swimming, did some pools. That was an enlightening part for me. I thought I could swim, and then Alvin gave me a program, and took an hour and 20 minutes to do his 40-minute program. So that highlighted that I needed to improve that side, and we were doing quite well, and we were getting out on the bikes, and we were doing a little bit of running. But then I think post Christmas, I think you got injured. I'm not great
we
at
both
training.
got sick. I know we both got sick around Christmas time.
And it's probably, we were just probably pushing a little bit too hard up to Christmas. I probably partied too hard over Christmas. You didn't recover enough, which both lead to not being recovered. Got sick over Christmas, and then, I don't know, I think we sort of didn't get back the program, did we, for a couple of months. Then it was March, and then we worked out that the event wasn't, and it was towards the end of March, and we were like, actually, it's at the start of June. We haven't got 3 months.
July. Was it July?
No, it was the first weekend of June.
Okay.
And it was, we haven't got 3 months. We've got a bit less than 3 months. We better up our game. And I got injured. That was when I couldn't use my left leg for a little while. So then we both had good training backgrounds anyway, but crammed a lot into 3 months. And again, you were looking at the performance end. I was looking at the having a nice day out on my bike and in the sea and completing it. But that both got us, and that was there were different mindsets, but that both got us to the same place.
Yeah.
And I wasn't particularly concerned at the time. I was enjoying my time out cycling across Scotland, and I think it took that first one made us look at things slightly differently, because when you're goal driven, we were looking at Ben Nevis, and that was a big spike at the end of the elevation profile, and we were looking at this big spike, but we hadn't really noticed that
there was another spike
10k in there was half that distance, so that was a 4,000 feet climb. This still was a 2,000 feet climb, and these little jaggies, although compared to the 4,000 feet climb, they were only a few hundred feet all the time, but they were very bumpy.
Yeah.
And then the hill profile on the ride was sort of just a steady upwards that we didn't really.
4,500 meters of climbing, I think, on the ride
it was pretty
and the run, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was I
say run.
There was some running to the sausage patches at the end. So yes, it was a very different event, but one that then provided enough of my head to say, I'm thinking of doing this, and for you to say, yeah. And that's how I've noticed, one of the things, I guess, being content with where I am, or just liking a challenge and seeing what I can do. Somebody said to me recently about, I think I'm going to run 100 miles next year. I was like, oh, okay. To which I told Fran, she was like, you don't have to agree to do everything with everybody. And I don't. And I'm quite happy if I don't. I'm happy if I do that and try it with him, and I'm happy if I go along and provide crisps and bacon sandwiches.
So another journey that we started then was cold water swimming.
By accident, because we didn't know it was going to be so cold.
Yes. And that's something that I've carried on. You've come back to it now. And I remember, so we kind of started off and we did quite a lot in the beginning, did quite a lot of cold water, because we had to do some outdoors, and we had to get acclimatized because we were swimming in the North Sea in Scotland. Turned out it was 8 degrees when we actually did the event.
Which then prevented a lot of people finishing the swim, didn't it?
So
because they hadn't been outside, they just thought, oh, I'll be okay, I've only got to swim a set distance.
Yeah.
But 8 degrees is enough to change where your balls are.
Yeah, it's quite a challenge, actually, the whole cold water thing. And that's been a real journey, and we're swimming now, and so now for the first time we're kind of setting new records, because it's 12 degrees and we're swimming without wetsuits.
Yeah.
So we're going to see how long we can go without wetsuits, because we'll just have to see.
I'm ticking off the seasons and the weeks. So it's okay, we're in November, so that's the latest I've swam without a wetsuit.
Yeah.
But then it's still autumn, so now I want to swim in the winter without a wetsuit.
Yeah.
And that's December, which, the way the temperatures are going, that'll possibly be down to 10 degrees.
Yeah.
And we are swimming as well, so there's lots of people doing cold water exposure and ice baths and stuff for the whatever the perceived mental health or physical benefits are, but we're still getting in to swim.
Yeah, we're actually swimming
further
yeah
than I am, but that's always been the way. Again, I'm a completion competition.
Just swim as fast as I can.
Yeah, attacking the water dramatically. So yeah, and that's part of the challenge now, is standing there at the start thinking, am I going to be able to get in today? And then what happened on Friday was my wonderful swimming partner and your real partner said, I'm not sure about today and you've got to go in first, and I'd normally follow her in, and then a diver came up and went, are you getting in today? And that was enough of a spur to me to go, all right then, I'll get in. And then once we were in, it was okay.
Yeah.
But you start building up that picture of, this is going to be
I kind of
really
love
cold.
That. It's such a mental, it's a stepping off a cliff thing. You know it's going to hurt, and then it's going to be okay after, a couple of minutes, it's going to be fine. But it's just that stepping off the, into the water, and I just find it fascinating because you're kind of driving there and you know you're going to do it. You know
there's no way you're not going to get in.
Yeah, you kind of have to do it because you've committed to it.
And it is £6.
And you don't want to waste your £6. And look like a fool in front of your mates. And it's just that you kind of know you're going to do it, and your brain's just going, no, and you do it anyway. And that's the thing. It's like your brain's saying no, but you do it anyway. And I think that's that for mental strength. I think that really
when everything about you is saying no,
and
you choose to go anyway, it teaches you that you can pretty much do anything you decide to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might just be someone saying, I'm waiting to get out, for you to drive you in. It's not, there's nothing there. And it might be somebody one day will say, actually, I really need you to come and help me do this. And we might not go in, but I think we'd probably go in just to experience the cold and then get out, rather than doing such a long swim. But I can't imagine what anyone would be able to say once we're there and we've decided that we're swimming to not swim.
Yeah.
So it's just that, and it is quite literally stepping off a cliff, isn't it? You're ankle deep, I'm mid-thigh deep, and then it's not, the way we used to go in was down the slope, and I think that was worse because it was gradually getting there, whereas now we go in off the
it's almost a
sort of landing pad, and then it's you're mid-thigh deep and then you're in, and you're exposed. But I've tried cold water showers and things, and they don't really do it for me. I'd much rather be immersed and just get in and do it and spend the time in there than fanny about, because the cold water shower's never as cold, and I don't get the, I guess I get the little apprehension when you're starting to turn it to cold, or if you started it cold and the apprehension stepping in, but it doesn't seem to be, there's no risk. There's whereas getting into the cold water when it's as cold as it is at the moment, and some people say it's not that cold, there's that risk, there's that, will I be okay? And we know we've got evidence every week that we're going to be fine. We can both swim, we're not worried about the stuff that's underneath. I've spoken to people that are worried about going to somewhere like Stony Cove because it's so deep. And actually I was having a conversation with my nieces and my little boy in the sea swimming this summer, because they didn't want to be out of their depth. But the very nature of swimming is that you're out of your depth. You're swimming along the top, so if there's a 2,000 metre drop below you, when you're swimming on the surface, you're still swimming on the surface. And trying to explain that to them, that it didn't matter where we were still out of our depth when we were lying down and swimming along. And that helped them a lot, and I think that's that's part of it. I guess I've got quite a lot of logic, and that as long as you can swim back to where you are in your depth, you're okay. So
I think for the first time as well, swimming this last Friday, and I was kind of swimming along going, do you know, like if I have to swim all the way back, or it's not going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to hurt a little bit.
Yeah, if I start not being okay, I'm quite far, because you can only get out where you got in, so it's you kind of got to swim.
So I didn't think that, although I didn't swim as far as you on Friday, but I've focused, and when we've had it as well, when we've been doing multiple laps of there in the warmer months in the past when we were training for the Ironman, you get in, swim the laps. Alvin got in and focused on his technique and would see his hand and know. I looked at the birds, the fish, the rock formations, and still now when I swim with Emma, I like to swim along with my face in for a bit, especially over the submarine, because in my part of my swim there is to see the stuff.
Yeah. And
swimming over the divers would freak out one of our other friends, whereas I like it, because then it's seeing. So it's the experience of the swim as well as the swim, whereas you were very much more, I guess, the same in like having a money goal, or you were very much performance driven.
Yeah.
I've got to do this amount of times because that will make me more overtrained. Aaron was, I need to do this set stroke because it's going to improve my efficiency in the water. I wonder if I'm going to see the pike today.
Yeah.
I wonder what birds I'm going to see today. I wonder if those birds are still over there nesting by the ladder.
Yeah.
And then I'd ask you guys, did you see the stork by the ladder? And they're like, there's a ladder. So I guess that's part of the being in the moment type thing.
Definitely.
I'm always thinking about, what's it? And maybe it's part of ADHD and my squirrels and look that.
Yeah.
That I'm always paying attention to all of these little bits outside of the exercise is almost a side effect of the thing that I'm doing. And that's what I try and encourage my clients to do, is find the thing that they want to do, and then the exercise is the side effect. And I guess now I'm driven by martial arts. I like being a martial artist. I'm now studying jiu-jitsu, which I think is going to be a lifelong learning curve. And doing that, I'm as happy. It's in excess. Sometimes you kick, sometimes you get kicked. I'm as happy getting beaten up in a roll as I am nearly doing the beating. I'm not quite at the stage where I can do the beating, but I'm improving. And the same in my own martial art. I'm as happy in sparring, whether I'm fighting a world champion that's going to kick my ass, or whether I'm doing the kicking.
Yeah.
And then helping the other person develop, and then teaching with weapons and teaching movement. And I guess with martial arts, for me, it's all about helping people move better.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, always what I'm trying to do with corrective exercise and things. It's just that now we're getting the kids to move better, so they'll be able to move better when they're older.
So you teach a lot of kids and probably slightly older kids as well, like maybe, I guess, 20 or so.
Up to officially, because a lot of the kids that I teach then go on to uni, etc.
Yeah.
So my official age range is up to 18s, because then they move off, but quite often they'll come back and train with me anyway. So they're sort of in their early 20s. And actually then one of my students came back for a session the other day and reminded me, it was who we've done an Ironman, Steve, and I was saying to him, do you recognise any of these guys? And he was like, it was 20 years ago I was here. I was like, have I been teaching that long? And I remember being an 18-year-old, maybe nearly black belt. I think I probably was a black belt. And being at my own instructor's 30th birthday party and saying to one of my best mates, do you reckon we'll still be able to kick when we're 30? And here we are 30 plus years later, and we're both doing okay still.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things that when you're 18, a 30-year-old is old. And now I'm touching 50, and it's like, actually I still I'm not that much more developed in my head.
Yeah.
So I've still got the same things. I still believe that I'm going to be able to do the same things. They just hurt a little bit more and I take longer to recover. But I've still got, if somebody said, oh, could you come and do this? I say yes before my brain's engaged.
Yeah.
So yes is my default.
So what advice would you give your 18-year-old, 20-year-old self? Or what advice do you give your students? Because you're quite a role model to a lot of
with that,
kids.
Learn about money.
Yeah.
So although I'm not driven by money, as a result of that, I've made some horrendous mistakes. So we had an investment property that we had to sell because we hadn't really factored in anything. And so learn about how, and part of that was remortgaging and credit carding and remortgaging, because to quote one of my friends, it's free money. But having credit cards when I didn't require them, I had a decent enough salary not to, but then not paying them off every month.
Yeah.
So understanding how the money system works, so you don't get to sort of my age and think, maybe I need to start thinking about pension. I've always had a pension, but it's a pony one. It's something I will look at some point because of you. And then from a relationship point of view, that the person you're with should enhance you. And if somebody's making you unhappy, if they're not the person that you're going to have grandchildren with, get out quick. Don't be in a relationship because you feel like there's no other option. Too many of my friends have felt like they were going to be washed up and on the bench at 30 and ended up in relationships that they really shouldn't have been in, and they thought they were okay, but they were settling. So not to settle. If you're unhappy, move on. And they're like, well, I'm too old to move on, but we're not. So at 50 you've still got another 30 years of relationship life. So at least we keep living longer and longer. So not to settle, learn how money works, and do something that you enjoy. And then so the cheesy thing about, if you do something you enjoy doing, you don't ever work.
Well, it's about so it's about doing what you really love. So
if you're finding a job that either rewards you enough that when you're not in that job you can do anything you possibly want, or finding a job that you're already rewarded. So I don't think about, I need to earn this amount of money to be able to do these things, because I find my job really rewarding. And then we have to save to go on holiday, but that's okay. Because then we're saying to the kids, we're putting money aside to go on holiday, and they're valuing their money and valuing that if you work, you can do stuff, and they're not dreaming of being a YouTuber and all of a sudden being a millionaire. So
and thinking that's going to happen.
And they're hoping that they're the one person in a million that's going to happen to. But they're, and I think I didn't really start looking at the personal, but I guess I've always worked in personal development because of the sort of work that I did with people. But I didn't then start looking at learning to control my mind with like meditation or breath work and stuff like that. So I encourage them to do some stuff where they're learning to calm down the madness. I teach quite a lot of people that are in various stages of spectrum or ADHD, and I'll go through breathing protocols with them so they can help to steady their brain, because they're so often told that they're neurodiverse and special because so they can't do this. But they've just got to find a way that they're held back by their spectacular gifts rather than sort of pushed forwards as a result. So I think that my, whatever it is, concentration issues that I have, they help me achieve a lot more because I see lots more stuff going on. In an injury world, I'd see movement patterns as they're happening, and all that information sort of goes in and then ties into other things that are going on. But then equally, my distractions mean that I see the fish, I know where the ladder is, I can look at the birds while we're swimming, but still swim.
Yeah.
So it's that side of things, so not to worry about getting to a place to be happy.
That's recently changed for me, actually, the swimming side of things, which is why I'm able to actually swim skins now, because before it was like, well, I'm going to put as much wetsuit stuff and hats and all the rest of it on because I want to swim as far as I can for as long as I can.
Is it about the performance?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas now I'm like, well, I don't care if we get in and swim 300 meters and it's 8 degrees, whatever it happens to be, and I do it in skins, because now it's like, well, I want to see what we can achieve swimming skins, as opposed to going, well, I've got to swim 2 laps or 3 laps, otherwise
you haven't done a performance.
Waste of space kind of thing. So so that's what's changed, and that's allowed me to now go, okay, I'm just going to swim. The goal is to swim in skins and just swim what you can.
It's changing your bar, isn't it? Where the bar is, and that's it. It's easier to be happier if your bar's lower. Or easy to be successful if your bar's lower.
Yeah.
So choose where you're.
But then your happiness will be the same.
Yeah. So we get to choose our own barometer for success.
Yeah.
So what makes us successful? My success is different. I guess that's the whole point, isn't it? That my success is different to somebody else's success. Now.
But it's all made up. Is the key.
Yeah.
It's all made up. Yeah.
Being a martial arts instructor and having the stripes on a belt, my stripes don't inspire me to try and get more stripes.
Yeah.
What I'm more interested in now is developing my students so that they've got stripes and they're improving their knowledge and encouraging them to try new stuff, because as part of that they'll develop as a person outside of martial arts. And that's, I guess, sort of it. And me and my best mate were both multiple black belts in different things, but in our jiu-jitsu journey, we're both happy just turning up, having a roll, getting sweaty, having learning stuff, but having some fun and spending some time together. We're not worried by having extra stripes on the belt.
Yeah.
Which is beneficial.
Or trying to be the best.
Yeah, I'm nearly 50. I'm not worried about being the next Tom Hardy.
How's your post-kids now? Has your success and happiness changed? Because obviously kids are quite a big focus now.
That's where I sometimes struggle, and when I'm feeling down, I've realised it's because I'm comparing, and I'm looking at friends I have. I've got a really powerful accountability group, and some of the guys are in the fitness industry, and I'll look at what they're achieving and think, well, I've been in the industry pretty much as long as they've been alive. I should maybe achieve more, or I should have maybe achieved more, and I'll start to think like that, and it's then when I realise, I'll start to appreciate. Fran will remind me that when I appreciate what I've got, I'm not worried about what anyone else is doing. So it's something like the comparison is the thief of all joy, but there's the other side of it. The comparison could be like inspiration to try and achieve more. But when the kids arrived, a lot of our time was changed. Our freedom of time wasn't changed. I'm very lucky that Fran knows that me having time helps my brain in whatever way. So I still get to do jiu-jitsu a couple of times a week. I still get to go out on my bike most weekends. I'll get to come swimming and stuff. And I think that the word "get to" rather than "have to" or "need to" is, I know when I'm in a good place because I get to do stuff. When I'm starting to feel that I'm not in a good place, it's because, well, I have to meditate or I'm not going to feel okay. Yeah. I'll need to do that because that's what somebody else is doing. But I think, I don't know who put me onto the concept of getting to, but having that changed that. Now our drivers for success are the kids happy?
Yeah.
When we first got them, I think it was within the first week, and we were all in the car, and we had a phone call from a social worker, and they were just completing a piece of paperwork, and she asked what our thoughts and aspirations were for the children that we'd met literally a week and a half beforehand, and clearly she didn't understand my sense of humour. Because I was like, can you repeat the question? So what are your thoughts and aspirations for the children? And I said that they don't die, and if they do die, that it weren't my fault. And I laughed.
There was silence on the other side.
There was silence on the other side. Silence from my passenger. And I was laughing, thinking, oh wow, funny. And then Fran went, I'm really sorry, we'll call you back. Darren just thinks he's hilarious. But equally, that the children are happy, and so when we did phone back and give it a legitimate response, is it just that they're happy, and we home educate them because the school environment wasn't right for them. They weren't happy, or certainly my daughter. So she was a different person between Sunday night and Friday night when the thought of school was upon her.
Yes.
We'd pick her up from school on Friday night, and she lives her best life. She is fully in the moment. You know us, you know that she's always planning for Christmas and the next event, but when she's when she's there, she's absorbed in what she's doing. She wasn't absorbed in what she was doing. She wasn't the normal person when she was in school.
Distracted.
So we chose to home educate, or at the advice of one of the professionals we were working with, and she was the person that she was all of the time.
Yeah.
They've had a difficult past. We still have times when there's kick-offs and unhappiness, but our aim is on home education, when we're asked about it, about the future, etc., is just that they're happy. I think there's a John Lennon quote, isn't it, that my teacher asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said happy. And she said, that's not what life's about. And he said, well, you don't understand life.
Exactly.
Apparently he was that wise at 5, so I think he probably said those words, but maybe not as young as that. But yeah, all we want for the kids, and the thing that's changed is that, I guess, like I said earlier, that my role in life seems to be, I'm happiest when I'm helping others. And when the kids first moved in, I was frustrated because I couldn't help as many people, forgetting the fact that
you were helping
the
kids.
very fact that they were there meant that we were helping them, and my role might have narrowed now. That will help 2 very specific people become the best that they can be. But then as a result of them coming into contact with all of the people that we help, they see a different side of the world. Yeah. And that's changing. So that's good. Breaking a cycle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it changed time factors, and having kids from their background, sometimes I feel rejected and stuff like that, but then I have to then come back to the fact that it's not about me.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, when we first went through the adoption process, I was always thinking whether I could be unselfish enough to have kids. Most of the time I am. But there are still times when you just think, what have we done?
Yeah.
So yeah, having them was a change in time, and I think more so for Fran. And she allows me to do the things that I do, so then I can be
your best self, really.
The best self that I can be. Because when I'm my best self, then I'm my best self for everybody, not just for me. And she allows me to do that. But that is Fran being her best self. So I guess my role is helping others become their best self, but in essence, that's only possible because Fran's got the same role.
Yeah.
And hers is a factor of 3 rather than millions. But she does the same, working in house and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting about being your best self because, and Fran allows you to do things that allow you to be your best self, because that's the same as exercise, I think. And I was speaking to a friend of mine, and he was going, well, if he goes out for a bike ride, or 2 hours or whatever, or if he does that exercise, because they are not the same, but family, young kids, lots going on, everything else, then he feels guilty, like he's like, oh well, I'm going off to enjoy myself, and then his wife's, well, what about me? I'm
stuck in the grind.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's because for me, like, exercise is who I am.
Yeah.
For me, exercise and work are, I'll obviously I work for myself, so I'm not as strict with time. I don't have a 9-to-5 job, but I'll go to the gym in the early afternoon because that's when it's quiet or something like that. So to me, exercise isn't an option kind of thing. To me, exercise is how I am at my best self, and that's the same. I was trying to tell him, like, it's like, for you to be your best self, you have to exercise.
Yeah.
So it's not about going, oh, I'm going off to have a ball and have a whale of a time and have time to myself, and you're at home still suffering. It's about me prioritizing being my best self, and I think Fran obviously recognizes that, and that's how she almost manages you.
Yeah, a lot of I think pretty much just manage me, and a lot of. So your exercise is part of who I am, but I don't exercise on my own.
Yeah.
So it's always, although like in our times when we've had an event, I have to exercise on my own.
Yeah.
But I'd much rather exercise. So when I'm doing our groups, I'm happy to exercise because really I'm just having a chat with some people, and exercise is part of what we do. When I've done strength training, we've got a fully equipped gym 5 feet away from us. I go in it when people come here to train.
Yeah.
And I'll train with them. If I have a process-driven goal, so I've got to go on the rower 20,000 meters this quarter, I'll get on and do it.
Yeah.
Because there's a process. But if it's just about doing exercise, and if it was to do with the fitness side, and you said earlier on that you now can go swimming and enjoy the swim and not worried about how many times you've been round. For me, when we used to go out on our bikes, it was a performance ride for me because you're much faster, but a recovery ride for you. The purpose for me being on the bike was that we were hanging out and we went for breakfast.
Yeah.
We happened to do 80 miles or 100 miles before 10 a.m. and then I was still back in time to spend my day with Fran. Now, I hardly do strength training because my training partner had a chest infection and hasn't made it back over to train in the daytime, and I prefer to do weights in the daytime. So I could go in there on my own, but I enjoy the process of being strength training with somebody else. So that's, I guess, when I was doing fitness for martial arts, I was doing a martial arts class with people.
Yeah.
And then jiu-jitsu, we get beasted in the rolling. So I'm burning as many calories in a 30-minute roll that I would in a 30-minute fast run from a work rate point of view. But I'm doing that with other people, and it's part of so that for me, when I've done those like personality testing, it's about energy from the group, and I'll give all of my energy away because I know that I can create it through qigong or breath work. But equally, when I'm giving it all away, if I'm in a group, I'm getting it all back anyway. So I think exercise is part of who I am. It's part of how I interact with people because you get more out of it. When I was working with the naughty kids, we'd always do a walk or a run or some pad work because they'd open up more about what they were struggling with.
Just like a tool almost.
Yeah, so for me, exercise, as a coach, as an injury therapist, whatever role I'm doing as a martial arts instructor, exercise is my entry to help them be the person that they are.
Yeah.
So they come to me to learn Kung Fu and find what it is they want to achieve in life and how to work towards that and not be driven just by the finance, like when we've had conversations in the past. When we were climbing, it wasn't always just about getting to the top in the fastest time because you're 6'7" and you reach the top. It was about the learning the skills that then develops you in other areas. So the very essence of going climbing or bouldering meant that pull-ups became part of what you do anyway. So it was always, for me, it's always been part of what I love doing. I love to be active, I love to be physical. I guess it gives me some calm, especially being in the water, gives me some calm in my brain. But if I'm left to my own devices, I wouldn't do any. Yeah. And I think that's what's made me successful as a PT over the years, is that I'm not the standard person that got into becoming a PT because I love to go to the gym. So I've always understood that fitness is a very important part of your life and development, and everything that you do is enhanced by being fitter, stronger, more mobile. Yeah. But it isn't my only thing. It's not the thing that I personally, if we sit around, I can't sit around. I get too hype, but I'd quite happily just go and walk the dogs and not see it as exercise. I'd go to
it's like movement, isn't it?
It's movement, I need to be moving, I need to do the stuff. But it's the interaction for exercise, which is why I always encourage people to join groups so to find an exercise that's not exercise. Yeah. And it's just part of the process. When I was a competitive or competing in points fighting, we were ridiculously fit, but it was part of the process. Yeah. The fitness was part of the process of becoming better on the mat. And I guess the same in jiu-jitsu. So
it's a bit the same like work, it's about doing what you love.
Yeah.
It's the same as exercise, is finding what you love, doing it with people that you want to do it with.
Yeah, because then it's not a chore.
It's not a chore,
And that's where I think people see exercise as a chore. They're seeing it as something that they have to do rather than get to do. And that's a big change factor. Yeah. And sometimes getting out on a bike for 2 hours might seem selfish. And I know when I did the last Ironman, the kids were going through a hard time. We were struggling with their behaviours. So I'd need to go out for the event that I was doing for 4 or 5 hours on the bike and do an hour. Yeah. It meant the event hurt a lot more. Yeah. Because I wasn't doing what was required. Still, I think I look at most things as if I'm a black belt. So if I do things like a black belt, I'm doing it to the best of my ability. At that point, the best of my ability was making sure the kids were okay. Yes. And not feeling like a selfish prick because I was going to go on the bike for 5 hours. That would have made me better in some ways for my client. But in the end, I was better because they realised that was the value that I needed to be. Yeah. So I needed to be the person at home, and getting out on the bike for an hour was better than not getting out. And ultimately we got.
Because an Ironman isn't an event; it's a journey. Yeah. And that journey is all the training. And I guess a lot of sacrifice, and it's very selfish and everything else. But it's it's a journey. And hopefully it's a learning journey. Yeah. And perhaps I definitely feel that there's a lot of people that shouldn't be doing Ironman because, I mean, even for us doing that extreme Ironman, I mean, I probably took about 6 months to recover fully from doing that. Yeah. Because it was a 17-hour, 19-hour for you day out. We literally probably ate about 1,000 calories, if that.
Yeah, we did.
During the day, burned 10,000. I mean, that was a massive deficit.
We didn't stop eating the next day. It was amazing.
No. And again, I look at because I just had the Hawaii Ironman, and they're looking at going, oh, you've got to get 90 or 120 calories in an hour, and I mean, we should never have been able to finish that Ironman.
I think with the mindset though, you can.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it, and we've all got.
But if you talk to the scientists, they'll be like, yeah, you'll never be able to finish it.
Yeah, or if you talk to a Ironman,
yeah,
or recreational athletes, they're like, well, you need to have done this amount of training, you need to have done that amount of training. But the one I did in Austria, there's no way I should have got through to the half marathon point.
Yeah.
Because I'd swam once a week, went on the bike every other week, and ran every other week. So that doesn't get you through a 2.5 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, and a half marathon. But I probably would have finished it if I didn't go in a mood with Powerade. And
probably
had prepared a little better with salts and water and fluids, etc. But for me, you can achieve most things physically if you've got the right mindset for it.
Yeah.
But that also means you've got to prepare as well. So I got that far because of my mindset. But
it's taking action, isn't it?
It's taking action and doing stuff. And being, I guess, it sounds like we're knocking triathletes. But the very fact that they're part of a community helps them achieve more.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes the elite make them believe they won't be able to achieve the things that the elite do because we're elite, and you need to be able to absorb 120 grams of carbohydrates in an hour, when normal people can't.
Yeah.
Their digestive system hasn't been trained to do that. But equally, what they're forgetting is, and the scientists are forgetting the fact that the elite, like Jan Frodeno, is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Finishes in 7 and 45 minutes.
He's finishing in half the
so
time.
So he's finishing in half the time. He's really efficient as well.
Yeah.
So he's not putting, although everyone's done the same distance, they're not putting in the same amount of effort. So for him to swim 2.5 miles or 2.4 miles when he's not in the fray of it all, is nothing in comparison to me swimming it. For you to swim it, we probably use up the same amount of energy because you attack the water, but you've used it in 55 minutes.
Yeah.
I've used that amount of energy in an hour and 20, 25.
Yeah.
But some of the guys that are in there and they're taking an hour and 45 minutes to finish the swim, so they're just making the cut-off. The amount of effort they've had to put in because their swim stroke's not as efficient, they're not. They're trying to power through. So then to say you need an hour and 120 grams of carbohydrates every hour you're on the bike. Your hand's on the bike for what, 3.5 hours?
5 hours.
They're going to be on the bike for 10 hours.
Exactly.
We were in Scotland. We were on the bikes for I think 7:12. So I was really pleased with my average pace. It was really good, but that's still 2 and a bit hours more than he did. I've got to fuel and go through. So it's looking at things that excuse me, as recreational athletes, we can compare ourselves and use inspiration. So use comparison as an inspiration for this is humanly possible.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's humanly possible for this human.
Yeah.
It just means that humans have got the ability, if they've got the right genetics, the right training program, that I often treat runners and say, well, of course you're injured. You're running 60 plus miles a week. Now, Mo Farah runs 120 miles a week. But that's all he does.
Yeah.
That's his job. He's got the time to do that. He has got children. But he's not worrying about his work stresses,
well, that is his
life
job.
stresses.
Yeah.
His job is to spend
to go for a run,
8 hours. So he can spend 8 hours a day running and then go home and live with his family. He's not going to work for 8 hours a day and then getting home, doing whatever he needs to do with the kids, and then feeling the guilt of, well, I need to go out and run 2 hours. So
not eating enough, not sorting nutrition out. Yeah.
Not having a massage every day.
Yeah.
Not having somebody to prepare your meals, make sure your fluid's okay.
Yeah.
So we can use athletes as inspiration, But unless you're an athlete,
Yeah.
you don't need to use them as a comparison. So the human body's an amazing thing given the right tools, but if it's not your full-time job, you haven't got the right tools. And if you've got the right tools and you're not recovering well enough, so you can perform a lot better than I can on a bike, at times you don't recover well enough.
Yeah.
So that then affects your performance, but then that doesn't only affect your performance on the bike, it affects your performance
Everywhere.
in life.
Exactly.
Because you're tired
Yeah.
when you're at work and you
Yeah.
can't be your best at work. So I think we need to rethink exercise as something that has to happen to enhance your life.
Yeah.
In the same way, it's all about finding that balance, isn't it? The work-life balance that
Exactly.
everybody talks about is we've got a work-life, exercise, nutrition, mindset, breath work, sleep. They've all got to be the best version of you. They've all got to combine. And
It's all these little things that all add up. It's not one thing. It's lots of little
Team
things.
Sky marginal gains.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
doing those little things. So they were so dominant in the tour because they changed their position by a millimetre on a bike. They took their own mattresses around, which gave their athletes a little bit better sleep. But it was all the little 1% that changed to domination for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
We can all do those little 1-2%,
Yeah.
and that makes us more successful at being the person that we are. So I guess that's ultimately success, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're the best person that you can be, and you're developing that all the time.
And it's taking action on all this and actually doing them, because it's one thing knowing. It's a bit like I listened to someone, Robin Sharma, recently. I'd never heard of him before, and he was saying just about not trying to read 100 books in a year, but reading 3 and actually really getting what they're telling you,
Understanding it,
and really understanding. And I, I've realised, because I read a lot, I've listened to a lot of books, and I'm like, sometimes I have to listen to books 3 or 4 times because they're so powerful, but you have to listen to them multiple times because your
and especially if those books,
concentration
I know,
doesn't last.
and I listen to
And
books as
personal
well,
development,
but especially when those books are in print, and it's not somebody's just put together like a lead magnet, and although they can be very good as well. I've got some friends with amazing information that they put into lead magnets, but if those books are in print, then a publisher's trusted that person's, well now we can self-publish, but if they've put all of their information out there for the world to see, it's worth looking at. It's worth listening to and paying attention to. And I'm guilty of, but my mum's from Northern Ireland, so I can compute language on a faster speed. But I listen to books at a higher speed. And I know there are some books though that I've listened to get through them because people have told me to listen to them. And I haven't really paid attention to the information. But there are little things that you can do. So I listened to a podcast recently that one of the most important things you can do to improve your quality of sleep is to get some morning light into your eyes outside, not through a window, and to get as much morning light into your eyes as you can, or be outside for as much time as you can, pre 10 a.m. And it helps really reset your circadian clock. It's a really simple, not cost thing to do. That was last Wednesday. I think I've done it twice. And that's because I was outside anyway. I haven't specifically gone outside just to get some. But then I start work when it's dark, and then you're then into the real world life, and that's all of these tools are available to us all. But when you've got kids, it's then okay. Let's get you outside. Let's go outside, and it will really help with their sleep. But then it's the kick-off of I don't want to go outside. I don't want to go for another walk. I don't care about the ducks, because that's my way of generally getting us for a walk down the canal. Going down for a sausage sandwich worked. So, but just getting some morning light. It doesn't have to be sunlight. Just the cloud cover doesn't matter to our brains. But that's who we've developed as a species over hundreds of thousands of years. But now we've got iPads, and we think that we can stay inside. But we're meant to be outside. We're meant to be moving.
Put a sun on the iPad.
Yeah, that's the way. Change the sticker on the back.
So just to wrap up, I just wanted to ask you one last thing about what's the toughest thing you've ever, or toughest few things you've ever done?
Those kids moving in. I always come down to the fact that I can pretty much, I'll achieve anything I've set my mind to do because I'm a black belt, and in those days and now on your black belt grading, you're pushed to your absolute physical limit, and then you have to perform the skill side.
Yeah.
So getting through the day and being able to stand up at the end, and back in my day, it was literally a case of stand up at the end and bow, you're done.
Yeah.
Getting through those and multiple black belt gradings and getting through the day, and the physicality of it, and the pressure of being able to perform when you're physically exhausted, that was part of who, when I said to Fran who I am, and she was, so you always talk about being a black belt mentality and having a black belt mentality in everything, and that's what you aspire your students and kids to do. So that was one, and then doing that extreme Ironman was, like you said, 19 hours of physical, where we were always told that people would, by people that had done Ironman stuff, that you find dark places on the route. And I remember on Ben Nevis thinking, this is doing me in now, how can I quit? But my brain wouldn't allow me to quit, so there had to be a reason that I was told to quit, so it wasn't my fault. So I remember thinking, well, if I break my arm, then I can get carried off the mountain. Oh, and my first thought was being sick. If I'm sick and there's blood, then it's not my fault, it's medical. And my instant reaction then was, I really don't like being sick. It's not something I like. I've been sick very few times in my life. I'm not going to be sick, so that's off the cards. I'm not going to try and make myself sick. And then it was like, okay, if I break my arm, I'll have to get taken off the mountain. I was like, but actually, if I break my arm, I can still run, I can still walk. So that's not enough of an excuse. I'll break my leg. How am I going to break my leg? How do I guarantee that I only break my left leg, because then I can still work, I can still drive, because we had an automatic at the time. It's like, well, actually, I can't break my own leg, because then it's getting dark. That will risk the mountain rescue people. The place I was on the mountain at the time, they couldn't have helicoptered me. So it's like, well, I might as well just carry on then. So I guess to go through those feelings, that must have been quite physically hard, or it was very physically hard. So then, but I think that getting the kids, and it's something nobody ever speaks about, is when we were going through the adoption process, they told us about the things that could happen because we've got adopted children, and how their behaviours might be different, how their the whole setup of being a child might be different because of their past traumas, etc. The day-to-day, 24 hours a day, non-stop being a parent, I think, that's the bit that I'm always, if I'm struggling, it's that. Yeah. It's the never-ending, and don't get me wrong, I love it. I love being a dad. I love being an active dad, but there's no break. There's never a stop. And then again, I'll thank Fran and be grateful for Fran, because the way, the physicality of being a parent and being a slightly older parent is just, it's just non-stop all the time. Sleep's always disrupted. We're always on the go. We're always watching out, making sure. So I think being hyper vigilant, and then my chosen ways of resting from that is to do jiu-jitsu and get beasted, go out on my bike for a few hours, go out, so there's still, for me, the physicality of doing other stuff gives me a rest from the physicality of being a parent, and that little shift of
it's a change, isn't it? You've got to do something completely opposite.
Yeah, something that's completely different. So, but yeah, the hardest physical thing, I think, is the 24 hours a day of being a parent.